Now, later this week, world leaders will travel to Germany for the Munich Security Conference. Now, this is Europe's most important gathering on global security, and it'll be happening just before the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The conference organisers have just published their annual report, which includes the results of a major global poll on people's attitudes to the war. Public opinion around the world is seen as a crucial factor as the war enters its second year. And DW's Richard Walker spoke to the chair of the Munich Security Conference, Christoph Heusgen, and he asked him if Western countries have the stamina to keep supporting Ukraine.
I think the stamina is stronger than Vladimir Putin believes it is. But of course, the conflict now has its consequences. We see it in energy prices, in inflation. But what my interpretation is from the report, first, Ukraine. Ukraine is determined. The Ukrainian citizens are adamant. They want to fight Russia. They see what is happening in the country. The most surprising finding in the report was that in Ukraine, 89% of the population say they will even fight on if Putin should use tactical nuclear weapons. In the other countries, yes, there may be signs of Ukraine fatigue, but this is also calls for leadership. We have to make clear that if Putin wins this war, it's not over with Ukraine. He has announced, and his foreign minister has announced a couple of weeks ago, that Moldova is next, and asked the Baltic countries. They expect Putin to turn against them in case he is successful, and therefore we need to be firm. We need to continue to support Ukraine, and we have also to make clear, also to the population, that we are in for the long run here.
You've also been looking at very important countries outside the West and their positions. For instance, India, South Africa. These are countries that have been pretty much on the fence so far. Do your findings give you any impression that that could change, that these countries might turn against Vladimir Putin?
Well, we have two findings. One, of course, is that in many countries the Russian/Chinese narrative is pretty dominant, which is that this is what happens in Ukraine is a prolongation of an East-West conflict, of NATO against Russia, and many are sitting on the fence and don't see that this is actually not East-West conflict. This is a breach of civilization, a breach of the UN Charter, the breach of international law. The positive finding is if these countries are asked, do you foresee in the future which kind of state, what kind of international structure you prefer? Do you prefer the kind of Western US system, liberal democracies, liberal order, or autocratic, authoritarian regimes? The majority in all of these countries say no, we want the liberal international order as the founding principle for our countries.
Now, here in Germany, you've been a strong voice pushing for very strong support for Ukraine. You just mentioned the importance of leadership. Now the debate is moving to whether Western countries should provide fighter jets to Ukraine. Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor here, has spoken out against that pretty adamantly so far. Do you think that's a mistake?
Well, we have to see what is needed. How do we cope with the Russian aggression? And we see that Russia is right now starting an offensive. They pay a very high price, but you can see how much a totalitarian regime is able to continue this ruthless, horrible war. And we have to support Ukraine. And instead of putting red lines, I think we have to see what is needed. What does President Zelensky, what does the Ukrainian army, what does the Ukrainian people need? And when you talk to military experts, they say that you need, when you fight a war like this, you need a combination of several weapons. You need tanks, you need artillery, but you could also need fighter planes to protect the airspace, to also get at positions that are out of range of artillery. Therefore, I think this should be a military decision. And as you know, our neighbors, France, Netherlands and Poland have not excluded. So I think we shouldn't put red lines, but we look at what is needed.
Now, the current tensions between the US and China will obviously be a big issue at the conference. We've got China's big top diplomat coming. We've got the US Vice President Kamala Harris coming. This current drama over spy balloons, what does that tell you about the current state of the US-China relationship?
Well, I think we agree that this relationship is right now not in the best situation. We have seen escalations over the last year, from the Pelosi visit to the military violation of Taiwan airspace. We have now seen the use of these Chinese balloons in violating international law over US airspace. And this spiral of escalation has to stop, and we very much hope that China and the US will use the Munich Security Conference as a forum to again talk to each other and see how these tensions can actually be resolved, or how can we come to a situation where we are not afraid that something might explode and lead to something we don't want.
Christoph Heusgen, many thanks.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.